Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to Works in Progress with Frank Fradella. I'm your host, Pat Sajak, and today I'm here joined by my very good friend, Sidharth Chaturvedi. Goes by Sid, and if you're in the art community, you already know who he is. You know the work, you know the name, you know the man. The legend continues, and Sid, thanks so much for being on the show.
I'm glad to be here. Glad to finally talk to you in actual voice.
I know we've known each other a long time, and Sid's been. What's that?
Just about a decade now.
Has it really?
Nearing that. We did. I mean, I did some book covers for you when I started freelancing, so that's at least 8 or 9 years ago now.
Oh my God, that's right. Wow. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put those in the show notes. The unreleased covers to books that never went to print. But that's when Sid and I worked together. Wow, that's right. Tremendous to watch his growth over the past decade now, and the work that you're doing. And I'm going to ask you about Inktober because, like, your ink drawings are, pardon my language, fucking legendary. Like, holy shit. Like, literally, I'm going to create a fan group for you that just says, God damn it, Sid, because that's literally the reaction that you get on everything, where, like, every artist in the world looks at your newest Inktober thing and they just throw up their hands and break their pencils and their paintbrushes, and they're like, oh, God damn it, Sid. And everybody walks away.
October than any other time of year.
Yeah, no, your work is amazing the rest of the year. And I mean, like, some of the personal work that you put out there, and I'm like, no, what? Like, you just keep growing in these amazing leaps of faith. And you're going to have to forgive me, viewers of the show, that I'm fangirling so bad right now. Because it's not every day that you get to talk to one of your art heroes, unless you're me and that you get to do it weekly. So this has been super exciting because, like, watching your progress and your growth, but like the Inktober stuff is mind blowing. And I'd like you, if you would, to talk a little bit about how your mindset shifts doing those two, like, seriously, talk to me.
Like how it shifts during Inktober?
Yeah. I mean, like, I know that there's a, do you feel the pressure of the expectation that's on you now because of how people are responding to the Inktober pieces of years before?
Yes. And unfortunate, I mean, the best year I ever had doing that was probably 2016. So the second year I did it. That's when it was still pretty early on, and there was, okay, when I say there's pressure, that's all in my head. There's there's no expectation with Inktober. It's supposed to just be an excuse to have fun and play with ink. So 2016 was great for that. It's just like open the floodgates and just have fun and see what happens. The years after that, I started to freeze up a little, just because of second guessing everything and thinking that every piece had to be more spectacular than the last one, and I had to, like, I couldn't do anything simple, and I still kind of think that. This last one in 2019 was the first one in quite a few years where I just decided, hell with it, and don't worry, just have fun with it. Because yeah, there were in 17 and 18, as those expectations built up, I just got into some weird stuff with that. Like, one year I was trying really hard to make sure all the drawings were as refined as possible, and that just, it froze a lot of them up. And one year I was trying to go crazy with compositions, and that turns them into interesting exercises, not necessarily pictures. So yeah, anytime I let the expectations build up, it hurts the work, which goes for a lot of paintings too, but you can really see it happening in Inktober.
So now with Inktober, there's no client, right? This is just for you, and it's like, people just do this thing every month, right? We're every October, it's a month of ink drawings, and their prompts and stuff. Do you follow the prompts?
No.
Okay, me neither. But I don't do Inktober. So So this is really interesting because like this is one of the things that we talk about on the show is mindset and how your mindset affects the work, right? So the difference between doing something for the pure pleasure of it and being able to play and explore, and then adding that layer of expectation, because I mean, the feedback that you get on these things is pretty amazing, right? And I mean, like, there's a lot of attention on them, and it's all you, right? There's no client to hide behind. There's no, you know, this was a brief by the client. I was just fulfilling blah 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 blah. This is all coming from you. So like, really, there's a spotlight, and that expectation creates this kind of resistance into doing the work, right? It kind of gums up the works, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there is an up and a downside to it. The upside is that even though I'll tell everyone else who tries to get into Inktober or is doing Inktober, yeah, I'll tell literally anyone else that there's no expectation. You don't need to do crazy complicated pieces. No one's judging this. This is the whole point is to just do an ink drawing every day. But obviously, I'm not listening to that very well because I won't let myself do anything super simple like in 5 minutes. So it's that expectation can jam up the work, but it also is a pretty good excuse to keep pushing yourself. So it can be good. Just
well, I mean, we certainly reap the benefit of it, right? I mean, we get the benefit of it because I mean, you keep putting out more and more spectacular work, and there's times where like I don't even know where you're coming up with these ideas. Like there was this, so far and away, and I hate to say that I have a favorite piece of yours because like there's just so many amazing pieces, but that one piece that you have of the guy in the rowboat kissing the mermaid. Mm-hmm. Just so brought me into a story, brought me into a world, brought me into a feeling, right? And like looking at that, I kept going, how the hell is he ever going to top that? And then the next day you come out with something, I'm like, God damn it, Sid, right? Like it's like every day for 31 days, it's just, God damn it, Sid, every day, right? You got this one with this kid rappelling down a wall and people looking out windows and he's like, and like, oh my God, right? The contrast, the way you're creating shapes and form, and it's just like, it's a masterclass. Right. And it is amazing. So I don't even know where I'm going with this. There's no question at the end of this. I'm literally just fangirling right now. My apologies to the audience and to Sid, whose time I'm wasting here. So have you found that this has brought you any more pain work?
No, not. Okay, so I'm saying no. I literally just finished an ink commission that came because of Inktober's was the first one. Otherwise, no. Okay, just to go back to something you asked earlier about those ideas, I get that question more than you'd think. Like, how do you come up with these, even from other artists? Yeah. And A, I don't know, but B, it's not even. It's not even so much just trying to come up with an idea. It's, I think the two things that feed into that, one is that most of the art I'm looking at by people who are still alive is, they're fine artists, they're gallery work. It's not the illustration world, although I look at that stuff a lot because I'm in that field. So it's a lot of work by people doing still lifes and figures and really quiet scenes, nothing out of the ordinary. And when you're in that kind of work, you're being told you need to make ordinary things seem extraordinary. And for fantasy illustration, it's the opposite. You need to make extraordinary things ordinary. So I'm used to looking at a lot of work that is proving that you can turn any idea into a picture. And the second thing I look at, most of the illustration I love, like all of my favorite artists are early 20th century illustrators.
N.C. Wyeth, Mead Schaefer, guys like that?
Yep. Like everyone who came from Howard Pyle.
Right.
and they were doing story illustrations for women's magazines for the most part.
Right.
And they weren't in fantasy illustration or this genre or that genre. They were doing everything. And like those people were the film directors of their day.
Right.
Like that was the popular entertainment. So they did pictures about everything. And I've read some of the stories that they did these pictures for, and they're just garbage. It's the worst imaginable material. And it's reached into that stuff and made just gorgeous classic pictures out of them.
Yeah.
So I'm just constantly surrounded by work that J.C. Leyendecker, he made ads.
Right.
They're ads for shirts, and they're great pictures. So I'm constantly looking at work that is proving that it, like, no matter what that idea sounds like, you can make a good picture out of it. So
this is amazing because
trying to just generate ideas. It's more like, well, anything can make a good picture idea. It's trying to narrow it down and, okay, how do I make this an image? It's not just trying to come up in words with like, I'll have a man kissing a mermaid, and maybe that's, well, no. It can be very simple stuff.
So you were actually the person, you and Dan Brereton are the ones who turned me on to those early 20th century American illustrators, right? Dan Brereton, who did the Nocturnals. He's largely a comic book painter, but he paints in watercolor. So he's one of the terrific. Again, in the show notes, you'll find it. Dan Brereton. But you and Dan are both people who started sharing images of your influences, and I'd never seen them before. My earliest influences came out of comics because that was my earliest exposure to art. Like John Buscema was my art inspiration for the longest time. So getting exposed to that and watching their composition and watching how they use contrast and watching how they use color was really eye-opening. Like there are some pieces, I want to say it was Mead Schaefer, who did something like, it was like mostly like this yellow ochre thing with like some browns in there, but like it was just like this 2-color painting, but like there was a bunch of figures in it, and like it was like a Western bar fight, somebody getting knocked over a table, and like the whole thing was magnificent, the movement in it, the energy in it, all of it, and it's like none of the colors you'd expect, and like all of it was just eye-opening, and that was something that you had introduced me to, so thank you for that as well.
Even that really interesting use of color, a lot of that, yeah, they were brilliant at it, and a lot of it was just limitations because of printing in the day.
So that, okay, so do you find, all right, I love this concept as a limitation as an inspiration for growth, right? I love this concept because one of maybe my favorite film is Blade Runner, and you've seen Blade Runner, right?
Of course.
Okay. So Blade Runner, when you think about the world of Blade Runner, right? It's always dark and it's always raining. And that was simply because Ridley Scott ran out of money. And he's like, we can't complete the set. We can't point the camera in this direction without showing the end of the lot. What are we going to do? And he's like, I've got it. Let's turn off the lights and let's make it rain. It'll cut down visibility. And you cannot imagine Blade Runner without that now.
Yeah,
but
and a lot of this is, in movies, this is the oft brought up problem with like heavy CGI. Like that's why the T-Rex in Jurassic Park worked.
Right.
That's why the alien in Alien is scary, and it's just not a scary monster in any movie after that, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this. I love this concept that your limitation becomes the strength, right? And so people who find these creative solutions around it, and I think that part of what's so compelling for me about the Inktober thing with the work that you produce is because it's incredibly limiting. Like there's no grayscale, right? You've got cross hatching and stuff, but even watching you do that is magical, right? Because I mean, you've got to create depth that way too. And like again, I came out of comics. So like I'm used to cross hatching and I'm used to them creating depth with that. And then you're like, watch this. And like you come in and just like bitch slap everybody all over the place. Like it's,
Well, I mean, a lot of that is just trying to focus on. I recently found out that there's actually a term for it, notan. It's a type of ink work that is only focusing on like the lighting with black and white. I didn't even know there was a term for that, but I was focusing on that for a long time. I still try to get more into like the hatching and the modeling and feathering and stuff. I've actually been told recently by someone I've learned almost anything worth knowing from, but I've been told I need to like get into that more because that is a huge aspect of inking. But no, that limitation is one of the reasons I was drawn to inking in the first place because, and I still do this. Like if I'm planning a painting, it's really easy for me, and I will do this with like magic work. It's very easy for me to go straight to Photoshop and plan the entire piece in like a grayscale painting and just keep nudging stuff around until it looks decent.
yeah.
And until I have the right rendering effect and light effect, and that'll help sell it to the client. And it's not the wrong way to do things, but it's a good way to stop yourself from getting a really good graphic piece that's going to kill at 100 yards. Ink is the opposite. That you have black and white, and that's all you have to work with. And if it's not planned graphically well, like if the light and shadow are not figured out or the white and black shapes are not figured out properly, it's going to look like a mess immediately. And I've made plenty of pieces like that. So it's very good training just to make your brain think that way. And as you know, it's extremely unforgiving. You have to be very decisive about what you're doing. And if you make a mistake, you're done. There's really nothing you can do. You can use whiteout, but you can see whiteout. It's bright blue on the page.
Right.
And it'll never go away in a scan. It will always look wrong. The ink doesn't look right when you go over it. So it's a really good training tool. That's why I got into it. And I also got into it because like at some point I read something on the internet that just sang its praises as one of the hardest tools you can use, like the most unforgiving, the one that records every movement and every thought you have. So it takes real mastery to do it with a brush. I still use pens and whatnot a lot, but like the goal is to get really good with just a brush and ink because yeah, you can't fake it.
So okay, so I love this concept, right? So this is great. Because your entire mindset here is I'm going to run towards the bullets, right? You're telling me that's the hardest thing to do. That's where I'm going, right? Like that's phenomenal. Because one of the things that I talk about a lot is that I find that a lot of artists stagnate their own growth because they continue to do stuff they're already good at, right? Instead of like, oh, I suck at drawing backgrounds. I suck at drawing landscapes. Well, then do a lot of that, right? Practice that, learn that, and then like fill a gap. And rather like, well, I'm really good at drawing portraits, so I'm just going to keep drawing portraits. I'm really good at faces, so I'll just keep doing faces. And this concept of like, no, they say that's hard, that's where I'm going. And like I mean, I think that shows why your growth has been so exponential over the years. I mean, your work on my early covers were amazing, and they're still amazing. They hold up. But looking at your work now, like some of the stuff, the personal work that you do is to me still mind-boggling. Like it's just gorgeous work.
Thank you.
So is that something that's always been with you? This kind of thought that like I'm just going to do the hardest thing?
Yes, and before I expand on that, I will say there's a give and take there. Like I'm glad to hear that the growth is evident, but I will also say there is a lot of stuff that I probably took years longer than I needed to get good at, and it's because of not taking the time on those like easy things. So for example, I've now, after doing this for a long time, figured out that I'm pretty good at doing crowd scenes and battle scenes. If you give me a picture of a single character looking heroic, I'm gonna mess it up. I don't know how to do that. So it's not that I can't compose that on a page. It's that I've not taken the time to properly finish a work like that before. So I have no practice doing it. I don't know what you have to do to finish that, to make it look like a finished piece. I can do a piece with 20 characters, all of them in a kind of okay level of finish. And I don't mean rendering. Even if you're doing loose brushwork and it looks like crazy textures and lots of fog, and there's still a point you need to get it to so that it looks like a polished product and a finished picture. And I can't do that on the so-called, and not that I can't, but on a portrait piece especially, I'm not good at that on what you would think is an easy piece, because I've neglected that. I kind of kept running ahead. So like that's a to be fair, but yeah, like there's a give and take there. The person I was most influenced by was Greg Manchess.
Okay.
Seen his work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all adventure, crowds, battles, animals, just everything under the sun. And I figured that's what I want to do. And also, I heard, when I was an art student, I heard like on the boards online that if you can do crowds, if you can do horses, if you can do all this hard stuff, you'll always have work. So I thought, oh, okay. And so plus, you know, who doesn't like a challenge? There is that element of like, well, I'll show them. But yeah, there's a give and take there.
Well,
there's something to be said for getting.
Right. So, but I mean, like you trained for, this is again fascinating because you're training for the job you want, right?
Yeah.
So like when you went into the industry, you're like, I know what I want to do. I know what they're looking for. So that's what I'm going to train for.
But and if it were the case of, well, now I only get crowd scenes and not portrait scenes, and I want to do portrait scenes, no, that would be a different thing entirely. And this is important. I left this out when I was saying it earlier. It's not that, oh, I won't do portrait jobs or single character jobs because I'm not practiced in them, so I'll just keep doing the crowd paintings and that'll be fine. The problem there is, okay, so another thing, they tell you over and over again, don't try to be fast, be good. I trained myself to be very fast early on, and because I figured it would help me get work, and it did. It was great. So the first half of my career, like, built on that working fast, doing these crazy compositions and crowds, that went swimmingly. And then I hit a wall. Because you can work fast, but you really have to be able to finish these pieces. They have to look really, really good. And it's like, you're not going to be competing in that low tier forever. Like, if you want to start moving up, you're going to be competing with, even as someone who's doing fight scenes and crowd scenes, you're going to be competing with Greg Manchess, Donato, Ralph Horsley, all these people who do this kind of work, but they do it really, really well. So yeah, the reason I was saying that I set myself back a few years by only chasing these hard targets and not the easy stuff. Neglecting that stuff hurts you eventually. You hit a wall and you have to train it, and then it takes longer. So it's, now don't get me wrong, just the way my personality is, it's like I will crib about like American ateliers. And do you know how how that schooling works? Like how the
No,
system...
I don't.
Okay, the ateliers, especially around the U.S., there's nothing wrong with these. This is a personal thing. They are modeled after a guy named Ives. I think that's how you pronounce his name, Gamel. He was trained in like these French atelier methods, and his student Richard Lack. So most American ateliers follow that model, which is however long you're there, like say it's 4 years, your first year is going to be several months of copying barg drawings, which are really refined, simple line or tonal drawings by a French painter named Charles Marg. It'll be working on those drawings for months, then several months of drawing from the plaster cast, then several months of black and white paintings from the plaster cast, then color paintings from the cast. At some point, you'll be introduced to drawing from the model, then painting from the model, then doing a full color still life. And you're doing this extremely refined work that you spend months on every drawing and every painting. And you'll do this over years just to get your fundamentals up. And the idea is once you've mastered this stuff, you have the tools you need to make very strong work later, no matter what you want to do. I would have gone absolutely mad if I had gone to one of the schools. That's just not how my brain works. And now the argument there could be, because I wanted to do everything at once, I got directly to doing the kind of work I want to do. It's also taken me years longer to start getting the work I want because of the way my brain works. I didn't want to spend a few years really nailing that boring stuff.
Right.
But there's a give and take there. If it's so boring that you stop doing it, then it didn't pay off, did it?
Right. So now I identify with this very strongly because I spent years as a graphic designer, and there are graphic artists and then there are production artists, right? I was a great production artist. I would knock out work very, very quickly. It's what I was good at. But spending days or weeks on a single project would drive me mad, right? And so I kind of feel like you, like when I started painting, it was like I kind of rushed through the process. Not rushed through the process, but like I lacked the endurance to kind of spend a lot of time on any one thing because I don't know, I got bored or whatever, and like it was all just personal work. I didn't have a client or anything, so it was all just me kind of trying stuff. And after I got to a certain point, I'm like, okay, well, I kind of did what I wanted to do with this. I'm going to move on. But where I'm at now with my own particular art journey is like at this place where like, okay, I trained all these years as a sprinter, but now I've got to run a marathon. Like I've got to retrain how I do this. And like suddenly like you have to become a triathlete to do this well, right? Like you've got skill sets that you didn't know that you needed. And there's like this whole thing where it's like, it's not just how fast can I knock this out? It's like, how can I refine this? How can I polish this? How can I bring this up a level? And, you know, here's where my level up moment is now. It's no longer in this place where like, I'm trying to get the proportion right or the, you know, the relationships between these things, right? It's like now, how do I take this to a new place?
Yeah, I think both of us like doing a large breadth of things, but at some point you do have to pursue something into depth.
Yeah.
And when you do, like it's kind of dull, but when you do that, it sort of makes all the other things you weren't working on level up at the same time, which is weird, but it happens.
Right. Yeah, I've found that all of the work that I do contributes somehow. Everything that I'm doing contributes. And there's so many ways in which I find that my mindset matters almost more than anything. And for me, changing my mindset about, I'm not wasting my time on this piece, I'm leveling up. Like that's an important process. And like, you know, for me, I put everything in geek terms. So like, you know, like when you're leveling from level 19 to 20, the XP that you need is much more than level 1 to 2, right? So like when you first start, you can acquire skills pretty easily. Like, you know, up to say level 10, like those first 10 levels come pretty easy. But when you want to get past that, you really kind of got to dig in and do the work.
Yeah. So what we like doing early on is leveling up a lot of different characters because it's quick and it's easy.
Exactly. Yeah. So what are you working on now that is your your run towards the bullets moment?
That's my what? It cut out.
Your run towards the bullets. What are you running towards right now? What's your challenge in these 10 seconds?
Good. I'm wondering that too. I'm doing. I mean, of course, I'm still doing my freelance work. I'm still doing Magic the Gathering. I'm still doing Dungeons and Dragons, and most of my time is with my day job in video games. For my own work right now, I'm not. Honestly, I'm not thinking too hard about going anywhere. I'm just trying to. I mean, okay. Firstly, after many years, I'm making a lot more time to do personal work at all. Like as soon as I started doing magic work in 2016, like late 15, I almost completely stopped doing personal work outside of Inktober. So I'm really making the time to do my own paintings again now, which is great. I love it. But I'm not trying to type of work right now. Right now, I'm because of again finding those walls I'd run into because of just huge gaping holes in my skill set that are stopping me from moving forward. Now, even if I'm getting a lot of like great jobs with magic or commissions right now, working those up to the same level that I already have is not helping me. And actually you start backsliding, which is very frustrating. But if you're, but at least for me, if you're just stuck at this the same level of skill and really only trying to get that far, and especially like the worst part is if you get into this mindset of, well, I'm just going to do enough to get through this job and then get back to my own work, it'll kill you.
Okay.
You never have enough time outside of the work anyway, and all you're doing is practicing making bad work if that's your mindset.
Yeah.
So like no. So I'm right now in personal work, magic work. I'm not aiming for something that looks like a particular kind of work. I'm just trying to practice making really good finished paintings and spending a lot more time on them now. Like the main thing I'm finding with any paintings I do now is I'll get them to a certain stage, like just the block in. And I'll get them to a point and think to myself, like, this is nowhere near done. This is maybe half finished. And I'll think 2 years ago, this is where I would have called it finished.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to not do that. Like I'm trying to, and it's not even an effort. It's like, obviously my taste has grown, my knowledge has grown. So I'm just not leaving them like that anymore. It's naturally taking me a lot longer to paint things now, which is good. It's supposed to be that way. Like, yeah, I think on average, I used to be able to paint like start to finish, like sketch to finish. I could do a piece in like an oil piece in about 20 hours. And that's long gone.
So I saw on, by the way, welcome back to Facebook.
Okay.
Good to have you back. Did I see on your profile that you went to school in Miami?
Yeah, I did my undergrad there.
Where are you from?
Iowa. Let me tell you my life story. I was born in San Francisco. When I was 6, we moved to India. I grew up in India. After high school, I moved back to the States, then did my bachelor's in Miami, then moved to San Francisco for art school. Worked there for a few years and then moved to Munich, which is where I am now.
Okay, so I find this kind of fascinating too. This concept that, like, you man, I don't know why I love this so much, but like this thing where, like, you live in Munich now doing art, right? And like you continue to do work for top tier clients that people would kill to work for, and you do that in your spare time. Right. Well, you've got this full-time day job, right? So you said you work in video games?
Yeah, I work at a publisher called Deep Silver.
Okay. And what kind of work do you do there, like during the day? Is it concept stuff?
It's mostly concept stuff. Actually, this year I got moved up to assistant art director, but I've not started doing most of that work yet, which I'm not in a rush to do it because I'm doing it because there's nowhere else to go and because they need an assistant art director. It's
Congratulations.
thank you. It's not. No, art direction is until you watch an art director at work. It's like, no, no, no. You have to have the temperament for this. But no, even right now, I'm mostly doing concept art. It's not production art because, like I said, we're the publisher. We're the bad guys that all our developers have to work with. So, like, my job is mostly editorial. It's like if we get concept work that we want a different take on, we'll do it. If a task needs doing that, like a developer's understaffed for, or they don't have the talent for, we'll take over it. If we need to write feedback and show them how we think something should be done, we'll handle that. Sometimes we'll help with marketing arts. And it's really all over the map because we have a lot of projects coming through our department. So we have our fingers in a lot of different things. We're just like, we're evil corporate.
So how long have you been in Munich now?
6 years. And
oh my God.
I don't speak German yet.
So now I follow you on Duolingo. Your score is pretty high on there. How do you not speak German?
Oh, this is something I talk about fairly frequently when my inability to speak German comes up. It's a weird thing where when I have Duolingo up in front of me and I'm in that Duolingo environment, everything rushes into my head. I know all the words. I can answer the questions up to a certain level. And as soon as the browser is closed, it all leaves. So this is something that you have to practice while actually talking to people. It doesn't cut it in the website.
Right. Yeah. I worked in the language industry for a while. And the thing that I would tell people over and over and over again is that you have to practice the things you want to be good at.
Yeah.
And, and that goes for art, that goes for language, it goes for everything, right? If you want to be good at talking to people, then you have to practice talking to people. Right? Yeah. If you want to be good at painting horses, you can't keep drawing people, right? Like you've got to start painting horses. So, oh man, this has been such a gift to talk to you. I would feel remiss if I didn't ask you for some pearl of wisdom or something before you left. Like, for somebody who's on there, people break up with me all the time. It's just how I go. So, what are your words of advice for people who are on their own artistic journey? I mean, like, how do you get them out of a place where, let's say, they think that they've plateaued?
Ooh. I mean, that's such a it's so general.
I know.
It's hard to say there. It depends from person to person. I mean, the best advice I've got with that I was given so far, which I haven't followed nearly enough, I have to keep reminding myself to do it, is, I mean, it's basically what you just
hang on, you cut out on me for a second. Repeat that, please.
Well, I mean, just echoing what you just said. Firstly, practice what you want to do. And that's part of a more general thing, which is not something I've remembered enough, which is you have to always practice making art, which doesn't mean you have to always have a pen in hand and you should always just be drawing mechanically.
Yeah.
It means that if you're drawing from the model, if you're doing studies, if you're just practicing, if you're sketching, if you're making a painting, you always have to, or at least this should be the goal, because again, I'm not very good at this, but you always have to have the mindset of making a picture, making a piece of art. It should never be just a mechanical thing you're doing. It should never be just a study. It should never be like I'm just mechanically doing my anatomy studies. You should always have in mind that you're making a picture. That will I think like that's probably the best advice I've gotten, and that'll keep you moving forward instead of just spinning your wheels.
So I'm so sorry. The neighbor here comes by every once in a while with their leaf blower, and they uh, just they're blowing leaves. Sorry, everybody. So,
And none of that, the audio, I mean, I didn't pick up any of that.
oh really? Because it's like
I
so
didn't hear
loud
the
over
leaf
here.
blower.
Cool. All
Yeah.
right. So everybody, ignore what I
No, it
just
didn't.
said. Yeah. So I was taking a class on schoolism, which I love.
Mhm.
Has
Yeah,
anybody
something like
tapped you
that.
to do work for schoolism yet?
No.
Okay.
So
Well,
this is the funny thing, Frank. Like when you're talking about like people who like my work in Inktober and all, I do have my, like, I'm not gonna pretend like, oh, I'm a nobody, but uh, but I definitely occupy a small corner of the art world right now.
okay. I'll believe what you're saying because you'd know better than I would. But you know, you're one of my favorite artists, and I'm really lucky to live during a time where I can actually be friends with my favorite artists. You know, where you know what I mean?
They
Because
are
like
fun.
it's incredible. You know, to be
No,
friends with people who are producing such amazing work.
yeah. No, I agree with that. Like as much as as much as I'll crib about the downsides of the internet age and social media and how it ruins discourse and all. Well, I've met a lot of great people that I would never have known about.
Yeah.
So.
So I was really lucky in that I met a couple of amazing artists. Like I've only ever been to one art class ever. Otherwise, I'm entirely self-taught. Me and that book by John Buscema, How to Draw Marvel Superheroes. Like that's it. That was my art education. Um, but I attended a workshop in Seattle, something like 6 years ago, with Ian McCaig and Brom. And I went because it was Ian McCaig. Like I like Brom's work, but like Ian McCaig has just long been like a hero of mine. And I'm like, I get to spend like 4 days hanging out with Ian McCaig. I don't care if I don't learn anything. I'm going, right? Like, and so like I went there and like that's where I met Carla Ortiz and that's where I met Sam Kaiser and like I met a whole bunch of Barbara and Mia Aruja. I'm butchering their last name. Sorry.
Was this at Spectrum Live?
No, no, it was just a workshop for those two artists, and it was in Seattle. It was a TLC, Tara
Oh,
Larson
okay.
Chang.
Yeah.
But great 4 days. But I mean, that's how I know those people, and but the schoolism thing has been wonderful for me because like this is what's been allowing me to kind of level up in areas where I have had absolutely zero experience. So I was taking this environmental design course with Nathan Fowkes, and he had this tremendous exercise where he's like, right, I want you to break everything down into three values, just three. And so he would ask you to do these studies of any painting you wanted or any landscape, anything, and just break it down into three values. And that exercise changed the way I look at art. It changed the way I did compositions. It changed the way I use contrast. And like that was such an amazing level up moment for me. And like I don't think I ever would have arrived there on my own. And so like I think that these moments and the access that people have right now to education for art is unparalleled in history, you know, between New Masters Academy and schoolism and like all of these online things. It's amazing.
It is. I would say it's absolutely amazing. I've certainly benefited from that. We actually have the opposite problem nowadays. There's so much access to everything that, again, you get that breadth problem. It's more difficult to pick something and focus on it like you're supposed to do.
Right.
Which is it's a good problem to have.
Right. You know, and I think that, and you'll hear me talk about this on every show that we do. The art community has been like the single best thing to come out of all of this for me. You know, art for me was always a solitary pursuit. You know, like it was just me and my sketchbooks in my room, and like I never thought I was going to be published or anything. I just kept drawing, and to find a community that encourages you and is always supportive, and you know, isn't is constructively critical instead of
Yeah.
just judgmentally critical, right? There's a very, you know, I keep joking, like, you know, every time you put out a piece of art, people assume that it's there for their judgment. Like they're now allowed to comment. I really don't like the way you handled this. Yeah, well, your kids are ugly. I didn't ask you. Shut up. Like, you know, like, right? Like you know, like this is different than like if you're showing it to your art director, like what needs to be worked on here? How do I level this thing up? So, I don't have anything else to ask you. I'm just so grateful to have you on the show. Thanks so much for being here. It's been tremendous.
By the way, I just realized when you said that you met Sam Kaiser, I only just now remembered. I think we met because he referred me to you.
Sam Kaiser referred me?
Mm-hmm. I think you knew him just slightly before you knew me. I think he's the one who referred me to you for those book cover jobs.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yep.
That's so cool.
I completely forgot that.
So many great things came out of that weekend. I can't even tell you. So, dude, thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate you being on the show. I'm so grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been joined today by Sidharth Chaturvedi. He goes by Sid. Check out his site at sidharthchaturvedi.com.
Yeah.
That's the one. There'll be a link in the comments. Don't worry about it. Next week, tune in for Iris Compiet, who's going to be here to talk about fairies of the fault lines and other amazing things. I tell you, every week I just get to talk to my art heroes. I'm jealous of me. I don't know about you. So, Sid, take care of yourself. Say hello to your family for me, and your lovely. Is it your wife now, or still your fiance?
Fiance, would have been wife, but we postponed because of all this craziness.
Damn COVID. All right. Well, so I still have a chance to attend the wedding. I know with me moving around, the invitation got lost. It's okay. I'll give you the forwarding address. It'll be fine. So thanks again, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Be excellent to each other. We'll see you next week.